Hi there, welcome back to the channel. So, 2 days ago I did the drum take and I got through it. It did take me, I came up here maybe 3 nights to get it. The first night that I started recording it, the video about it, I did not get a good take that night. I really didn't have the part down yet. I went home and practiced it on the drum pad, came back the next day and got really close. Got a couple of good takes, but little this, a little that happened. And it finally came in the third night and just knocked it out like after the second or third time. So what I usually do is after I get a good one, I'll get 2 more. So I got 3 takes, and the one that I used is obviously the one that I put up that I posted. The rest of them I just threw them away. So I threw away all that stuff out of there. That's one of the things I like to do whenever I'm doing this post-production stuff, is any of the files that I didn't use or anything like that, so it's not so confusing. I just threw it away, because sometimes you forget what the numbers are unless you remember to name the tracks before you go in with them, which is a pain. So I just like to name them on the computer. So I got it down to just the 4 tracks that I recorded. That's what's in the machine, and I've already pulled it out. Remember, what we're going to do is connect the special USB cable that comes with the Zoom. Go into the Zoom, you go to USB and hit reader, and now you will see the icon come up on the screen. Now, I already opened it up here, and what I'm going to do is going to go and get Mono 8 and just drag it into Audacity. Okay, I'm going to wait for it to pop up here. This is the snare drum. It's number 8 was the first track that I did. So the usual thing, I'm going to get a quick sample, go up to noise reduction. Okay, and then we're going to hit noise reduction and get the noise profile here. Then I'm going to unclick that, so now it's going to repeat it and just do the whole track. And as you can see, I got some really good levels here. Everything looks really good and it sounded really good. Okay, so now I'm looking around and I see a couple of peaks and stuff that I might want to deal with. Oh, also I'm going to silence this real quick. You can go up to generate and hit silence. On a Mac you can hit Command L, but I showed you there how you do it through the generate option. Then also I'm going to go over here and just I can see where I made some noise on the drums. There's no reason to keep that sound alive. But I did leave quite a bit of sound at the end there so that we have some room tone to finish the song with. Don't want to cut those too short. And I usually don't cut them at all, but there was just some noise there, so I went out a little bit and removed the sound. Now I'm going to just check it and make sure none of the changes I did caused any problems. Then we're going to go to the classic filters. At 100 Hertz I'm going to do the cutoff. Hit OK on that. You could adjust that to whatever you want, but I find that 100 seems to do a great job. For everything, I don't usually do that on the bass drum. Okay, so now we're going to hit this, and yep, everything's good. Everything sounds good. Nothing changed anything or made it sound weird. Every once in a while something weird will happen with noise reduction or with normalizing, compression, all of those. Yeah. Okay, so now I'm going to just kind of spot clean up a couple things. Right there I got overly excited, and you can see there's like probably 3 spots here. So I'm going to just highlight them, go up to amplify at the effects, and then I'm going to just say, I don't know, maybe I'll come off the top minus 3.0. We'll go 3 dB, and that'll just give us a little room there, so it's not hitting so hard. Good. And then I'm going to do the same thing on this other one, and that worked fine. You have to check that. Every once in a while you'll be able to tell that you did something and it doesn't sound good and you have to try again, or maybe it's not going to work. But that one sounded okay. So then I spot checked this one here. Go back up, repeat, and that's the cool thing, is you can just repeat. And then there's one little one here that extends to the bottom that I'm going to fix here. Over here there's just one more that's just a little loud. They're just popping out a little bit, and if I later have to amplify anything, it's going to be limited by the peaks. So you want to get the peaks more uniform so that you can amplify the entire track in a uniform way, as opposed to the peaks stopping you from being able to amplify any further, because otherwise the peaks would distort, if that makes sense. Okay, so once again I'm repeating the amplify, cleaning that up. And that is literally probably, let me just make sure everything was okay. I always check these, and don't have any volume going here, but just I checked them on the headphones as I was doing it, just to make sure that nothing happens that is untoward. Now we're going to go to export audio. I'm going to name this one Snare 1. You could call it Snare A, whatever, because remember I doubled the drums, so I'm going to have two snares. They'll be exact duplicates of each other, but it just beefs up the sound in the Zoom. It's another way of getting around the kind of weak preamps that the Zoom has as far as output and input, frankly. So I don't need to save the changes because I've already made the file. I've already made it, so I'm going to open up the audio so that we don't have that dumb problem where it gets dragged into the wrong spot. And as you can see, I'm bringing in Snare 1. My computer is slow, so it takes a little while. If you have a newer MacBook or a newer PC, that's not going to take that long. It takes a little longer with mine because it's an older system. I mean, it's just an older memory system. Okay, so now I'm going to bring in Snare 2. That's the same file, just renamed it, just replaced 1 with 2, dragged that in. Now we have two identical snares, and that just gives you a lot more beef, gives you a lot more output, but in a very natural, like not noticeable way. So now I'm going to drag out, and I finished. I'm going to now open the other file here that will show the rest of it. So the other day I only showed a couple of things. Today I'm going to show you how I clean up every one of these. And the other thing is notice how this thing does, I'm having to find it, it does not want to close, it keeps wanting to stay open. So when you drag it to the trash, you just have to be patient and watch for it. I've noticed sometimes keeping the dialog box open before you drag it to the trash makes it go to the trash better, but for whatever reason, that will happen sometimes. You got to watch for that. But as you can see, I was just patient and got it out. Okay, so now I've dragged in the next one. Let's see here. We're going to go mono. Let's see, mono 9 is the next one, and that will be, mono 9 will be the left overhead. So I'm going to open it back up again, go back in. Where are you? There you are, we know, there's the audio, and let's see, we're going to go with 9, drag it over to Audacity, and you could open Audacity first and do it through there, but I find that it's easy to do it this way, quicker. Okay, so there's the file, and it looks pretty good. I'm not going to amplify anything because I find that you can get, the levels will be fine on drums when you're mixing the song. And plus, I'm going to do 2 of each, as you know, so there'll be a lot more volume than what you see on this file. Okay, I'm just checking it out, making sure everything's okay. Just playing the file. Okay, we're going to do some noise reduction here. First thing we do is get that sample. Then I'm going to repeat. Good. Now, as always, I just check the file, make sure everything's okay. Then I'm going to silence, and here I can just hit Command L. You can also go to generate, as you remember, and about the same amount over here. About the same amount that I did with the last, the snare. This is kind of snare 2. This is the left overhead. Go back to the classic filters. At 100 Hertz, we'll do the cutoff. Good. You can see how it changes the file. Check it and make sure no weirdness occurred. Sounds okay. You can't hear it, of course. Headphones. Then we go to export audio. This one I'm going to call left overhead 1, sorry, left overhead 1, LOH1, and then of course its duplicate will be LOH2, and then I will pan both of those when I do the mix, like 30, 40, whatever I decide to do, and then the right, both of the right will be, all right, and then I change that to overhead left, so that when I do overhead right, the 2 overheads will sit together inside the Zoom as opposed to separating due to left and right in alphabetical order. Okay, so now I brought in the overhead left 1. Now I'm going to have to go rename the overhead left 2 once that thing gets in there. Like I said, this is a little slow. Okay, so now we're going to go back to overhead left and make that overhead left 2, which is just renaming the file and dragging that one in. And there's probably a smarter way to do that I'm being stupid about, but it just seems to work when you have 2 of them. It just beefs it up, makes it sound good. It gives you a little more volume, a little more presence. Alright, now we're going to go to our right overhead. That's the mono 010 wave file. And it's coming in, And it looks nice as well. That's the right overhead, very uniform. Not many peaks there. Just that snare drum that was getting a little peaky. I got a little too excited playing that. So I'm checking the file here just to check to see that it, sounds good. Now we're going to do our usual stuff. Here's the ritual. We're going to take a sample, go down to noise reduction, get that noise profile based on that sample, unclick it, because now we're going to do the entire track when we repeat, and then you can see it highlights the entire track. When that is done, I'll usually go to classic filters. And once we get to our classic filters, same drill, 100 Hertz. I might have rethought that if my bass drum hadn't sounded so thick. I might not have done that at 100 Hertz because this right overhead does capture the bass drum. And if you weren't using a bass drum mic, this would be how you'd capture your bass drum. So you might want to not roll that off as much if you're trying to get as much bass response as possible. Now I'm going to generate some silence. I'm doing it the slow way. You can also do Command L on a Mac, and whatever your paste is, or whatever, I'm not sure what it is on a PC, sorry about that. I use Macs only right now. Okay, so now we're going to export it. I'll rename this one overhead right, OH right, so it'll sit alphabetically with OHL. Alright, and there's no need to keep this file because, we don't need it. We don't need to save a project on that. Alright, now let's go to, and we're going to drag, let's see, where are they? Oh, so I'm looking for my overhead right 1. It's around here somewhere. Oh, there you are. Okay, so you're going to go in, and then we're going to make that a left. I'm sorry, a number 2. So we have the second version. And like I said, overhead left would be like 30 to the left. Overhead right would be like 30, 40 to the right. Who knows, even more. It just depends on how the mix sounds, how the recording came. It's different nearly every time. Different things happen, different kind of sounds happen. Depends on the track too. You might start getting a certain vibe from the track that you're not getting any other way, unless you pan those drums. Alright, so now we're going to do the bass drum. Let's see how this one looks. That's number 11. Looks very uniform. This wasn't too bad of a drum performance as far as like just levels being uniform and not all over the place. Okay, everything sounds good with the bass drum, nice and fat, really fat, and I don't think I'm going to cut it off because it just sounds so good. Okay, and I can always do it later. You can always bring this back in, get that noise profile, click so we can do the entire thing. Everything's good there. Good. Classic filters. Should I cut it off here at 100 Hertz? So it really reduced the file size, and I could tell that it lost some of the air that I was, the deep air that I'm going for, and I really like a big booming bass drum. So look at this. I'm going to undo that, get my file back, and then just export. I can always bring this back in and redo it, right? If I decide that it's got too much boom in it, or if it's just causing clouds to build up in the mix, I can always go in and clean that baby up after the fact. So for now, I'm not going to cut that one off. I'm just going to export it like it is. And as you can see, I've hardly done anything to these drums. I haven't done any compression. We could try compressing that bass drum, but I can tell you with that nice uniform waveform and with it sounding the way it sounds, it's not going to be necessary, and you will definitely lose some air if you compress. Okay, so now I'm going to come out of here. I'll kill that. Let's see here, and drag in bass drum. Let's see, what do we have here? Oh, I had to get rid of a file there. I had to throw that file away or it wouldn't allow me to rename it on the desktop. So I'm going to silence that beginning space before the click in, and then come here. It's about 10 seconds after, so it gives plenty of runoff time, plenty of ambient tone at the end to work with. This song has a hard ending, with maybe 3 seconds of overhang of the sound. Now we're going to export. Bass drum is what I'll call this, bass drum 1, I'm assuming, yes. Save it, and I'm saving it in 16-bit wave. You can save it in whatever you want, but remember that if you're taking it back to the Zoom only understands 16-bit files. On your final mix, you can output in 24, floating, whatever you want to do. But if you're trying to go back to the Zoom, it's going to have to be a 16-bit wave, or it's not. The Zoom will not accept it. It'll look like it's going in, but when you go to try to find the track, it's not there. Okay, so our work is done here. I've got the files named. I've got the original mono tracks. If I ever want to go back and redo this, like, because once you do it, once you change it in Audacity, the file's been changed. So if I want to return to the original, if I decide, hey, you know what, I want to cut it off, or I don't want to cut it off, I don't like what I did here, or you know what, the silence was too soon, I'm going to go back to those original mono 008 through 11 tracks as opposed to the ones that I've named, if that makes sense, and then I just chunk the named ones. So here we are getting back to 1. Here, all of our files, everything, and you can see how it alphabetically ordered them. That's why I wanted it to be OHL, like overhead left, overhead left 2, overhead right 2, so that they would all be bunched together, and it's just easier to track them down, when you've got them in the Zoom. It's just a little thing that I prefer. Now I'm going to drag it to the trash and let it go. And I think that is it. Yeah, that's all I did. Okay, good. So now, that is a very good example of how to clean up these tracks. Now, of course, you can do a lot more. You could do compression. And typically, after we do compression, we're going to always normalize. I don't know why exactly, but it just sort of seems to bring it back to 1, especially if the compression takes it out of the, gives it too much gain so that you're peaking. So if that happens, you normalize by 1 dB or something, maybe 2 dB, and you'll see the change occur where it brings the waveform back down. But like I said, compression I'm careful with. I really am. I don't want to get that crunchy sound, especially in 16-bit, especially in digital. You know what I mean? You can really start pushing that, and it starts to sound artificial and thin. The reason that those recordings from the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, where they're using 2-inch tape, and the recordings that are made by people who've continued to use tape, there's a lot of engineers like that. I mean, not a lot of them, but there's a couple of holdouts. You'll just notice, not that analog is better, it can be better, but when you record like that in that kind of medium, you just have a lot more headroom, and the distortion doesn't sound so nasty. So I try to avoid pushing the signal to the point where it just sounds super compressed, because then we start to build that up, right? And by the end of the day, once you get to the mix, your song is, pretty compressed, pretty brick-walled, pretty, pushed. It doesn't have that dynamic sound, that big tone of the room. You're getting something out of this out there in Zoom land and with your projects. So good luck out there. Keep working. The main thing is just to keep working on your projects. Don't give up. Don't get discouraged. Don't get tired. If you do get tired, take a day off and recharge. Get outside in nature and stuff like that, and you'll have the energy to get back. Every time I start getting tired doing one of these songs or like a project, I just take a day or 2 off, clear my head, and get back into it, and I usually feel great. So don't burn out. Just keep going and let it rock. Thank you.